Good evening, everyone. Israel, good day. Welcome to our virtual gathering of Thélá. I'm Makwathlot, Leslie Bonshore, one of the board members of Thélá. Thank you for joining us. Before we get too far, we want to start in the best way possible, and I'm going to ask our Auntie Pat to start us with a beautiful prayer, ground us in this beautiful healing conversation we're going to have this evening. Over to you, Auntie.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. We're all always told that prayer is important, so we're going to ask Teacher Siam just to come down upon us, to guide us into our work tonight. We've been destined to come together to have a voice, and we ask Teacher Siam just to empower us in a good way so that we can do the work that we need to do, and do this in a good way, the way that our grandmothers taught us. We ask you, Teacher Siam, as we're the life givers in the important role of who we are as women, we just ask you to guide us tonight in a very humbling way, but in a very good way, in a respectful way. With this, we ask you, Teacher Siam.
Thank you again, Auntie Pat, for starting us off in a good way. I do want to provide a bit of a content warning, and we will put up a number for you and a message in case you need support from listening in on this conversation. We're coming together as grandmothers, matriarchs, aunties, sisters, cousins, friends, to share in a conversation around the impacts of the opioid crisis, suicides, the relentless grief that our communities are going through. This panel has 4 members of our Thélá and Stalo women, and we're going to get them each to introduce themselves in their own way. And one of the things we wanted to ask you, our audience and our ladies here is, how many people do you represent as your family? All of us, we have extended families. Sometimes we speak on many when we're talking about these kinds of issues. And it's important for us to say out loud for those that'll be watching later, how many voices we really bring into the room. You may only see 5 women here, but there may be hundreds of voices that you're actually going to hear from, hundreds of voices and experiences. So we want to make sure that we collect all of that as well. So to Patricia, then to Joanne, Carrie, and Melody.
Okay. Well, my name is Nancy Patricia Charlie, and I was always known as Pat Charlie until my mother passed on, because my original name that was given to me when I was born was Nancy Patricia Charlie. But they called me Pat because my mom was Nancy. So since she passed on, I've been known as, I took back my name as Nancy. My mother is Nancy and William Phillips from Thélá, but my mother comes from Chiacton. So we come from a very large family over here. And, you know, my mom and dad had 12 children. So the 8 boys and 4 girls and 1 adopted sister. And I married my husband February 23rd, 1960. So we just had our anniversary, and we had 65 years. We have 5 sons and 1 daughter. We have 13 grandchildren, and we have 14 great-grandchildren. And with all of the many gatherings of the way that we were taught by our parents, is we had to know our relatives. So we have numerous relatives all over. The important thing that I would just like to express is that we always had to know our aunties and our uncles and know our cousins. And a lot of these things have really gone by the wayside, and a disconnect. So my prayer, as we talk about getting connected back into a circle of family, and which is important for us as Womach people, And I just wanted to say that, with the many years of marriage to my husband and with my children, and now we're expanding much more. It's such a beauty of a lot of things that we have to do as women. And there's lots more that I know I will be able to share when the time is right. So that's just a little bit of who I am.
Thank you.
Well, Huialamat Tilsqueak, ylexw Stalo, Chawathal, Casta Cree Nation. Hello, everyone. My name is Joanne Hugh, and the ancestral name I carry is Huialamat. And I get that name from my late paternal grandmother, my dad's mom, which is near Kakwa Lake. And it means everything is right when standing on her own 2 feet. And from my mother's side, I come from the Cree band in Northern Ontario, Moose Factory. And I do come from a large family through Stalo. And I've been a part of so honored to be here tonight. Thank you, Leslie, and for having this open conversation. I've been a part of in the background of Thélá Out since we started this movement back in 2015, 2016. And I've been able to document and capture the movement of our Stalo women, which I think launched off of the Idle No More movement, actually. And so tonight's conversation is going to be really special, but also really hard. But growth and change and effective movement doesn't happen without hard conversations sometimes. So I come from a big family on my dad's side, the guitarist Jackson. My last count when we were doing our family tree with my Auntie Dolores was we could count 235 relatives, like just in the guitarist Jackson branch. And probably it's still growing. I'm going to be a grandma in July. And then I have 2 granddaughters, Jada Lynn and Lily May. And I have 2 sons, Clinton and Dylan. And then my husband, Craig. And this coming August, we'll be married for 30 years. And so that's a little about me. And I look forward to this evening, all my relations.
Shonaka Tilsqui, Ylexw Aelis, Quas the former Slali, Chapter Squalwell. And most people call me Carrie, and I come from Chehalis. And I'm a very, very grateful and a very proud mother I have 1 son and 3 daughters. And I have 2 daughters who are on the other side, but they're still with me today, and they help to guide me for what my role and responsibility is in life. And I'm very grateful for my children, and I'm even more grateful for my grandchildren. I have 6 beautiful grandchildren, 4 grandsons and 2 granddaughters. And I'm be blessed in April. I will be having my first great-grandchild. And that's such a beautiful thing. And that's very inspiring for me as an Indigenous woman. And it's a reminder to me that it's important for me to do my very best to take care of myself, because I have so many things that I had to learn about life as an adult, because there were things that happened along my journey that disconnected me from my family and disconnected me from my community. And it's not an easy thing sometimes to talk about, but how are we supposed to heal if we don't talk about those hard things? And I always remember those beautiful words from our ancestors, our elders. And ylexw, I remember some of the things that we would talk about, and she would ask us, who are we and what do I need to pray for, so I know what I'm going to be doing, and I'm praying for you so that healing energy will surround you. And I just remember elders like that, the beautiful things that they've shared. And I feel very privileged in being able to receive those kinds of messages, because that elder saw something, and thought that maybe I deserved to hear and to know what it is that they had to offer. And it's not an easy thing to be an Indigenous woman. I remember one afternoon sitting in the kitchen at Gwen and Stephen's house, and looking for support and looking for help, and I remember Halikotel saying to us that I don't know if people understand what it means for our Indigenous women. And I think more people need to understand the things that have happened to us in our lifetime. And I think about that, because Shonakwa is my grandfather's mother's name. And I remember when I received that name and how afraid I was because of it being so unknown. I didn't know anything about that piece of who I was and where I came from. But I was told at the time when I received that name, and they, don't you do anything to dirty that name. And you have a great responsibility to your granny. I never forget those words. And I remember those people that shared those teachings with me. So when I struggle, I think about my granny, and I think about what I need to do to help myself so that she can have some freedom in her life in the spirit world. And when I struggle as well, I always say, what would Auntie Pat say? What would Auntie Ginny say? What would Grandma say? And that's enough to keep me above water. And awtxw, my grandmother used to say that when we were growing up, and I never understood what it meant. But when I started getting connected back to my roots, I used to hear it all the time. And then, to do things with a good heart and a good mind, and all that returns will be good. And even though I didn't understand the words that Grandma Quatasia was saying, my heart and my body felt it. And when it came time for myself to understand those words, I do my very best to apply that to myself. And I know that it's, my life is not perfect, but it's something that's the driving force for me to carry on and to continue with my journey. Osiam.
Thank you, Carrie. Melody.
Aswale, im shwalish lali, telsqui, talitza kwa Shwahamel. My name is Melody Andrews, and I'm from Shwahamel. My parents are Roger Andrews and the late Audrey Kelly. We have a large family, and my dad's always bragging about all of his grandchildren. He says he has 53 grandchildren, and I didn't really count, but we do have a large family because I have 5 brothers and a sister. But it's kind of difficult right now because the family dynamics, we're not all talking or close, so we're all separated. We're all in our own little family silos, and it's a little difficult for family get-togethers. So I think when we go through and navigate our families to have those connections again, and that's something that my dad says that he wants before he goes, is for all of the family to come together. I'm a recent grandmother, just became grandma, so I was welcome to the Grandma Club. My grandson is 5 months now, and I just seen a video of him rolling over. So I'm really excited to be with my daughter and watch him grow. And I mean, you embrace a grandchild more because you miss all of your other kids growing up. They're all grown up now and they're all moved out. And now that I got a grandchild, and I just hold him and love him, and you get to do it all over again. So I just feel that I'm just so happy. And thank you for having me here. Very honored to be amongst all the other strong Stala ladies. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for sharing a little bit about yourselves and your families. For our viewers and participants online, we encourage you to use the chat function and the question and answer boxes. If you have questions, I'm going to be monitoring them throughout our discussion. And also, if you want to do your own land acknowledgement, please feel free to pop that into the chat box just so we can all practice acknowledging where we're calling in from. We do have some good participants online. Thank you for joining. I know sometimes these events are hard to hold during the day because you're all working people as well, or retired but still working all the time, it feels like. Just retired from that paying job, and now we're just doing other kinds of work. But, just to recap on why we came together in this virtual circle with all of you. Actually, it's conversations I've had mostly with Auntie Pat and several other women who are members of Thélá. Just always talking about, that this state of grief in our communities, you can just feel it, right? And many of our members and Stala community members rely on Facebook for messaging. And so we go on there to see what's going on, and repeatedly, like weekly, there's a memorial for someone. We've lost someone. And another one of our darling members, Sydney Ned from Samath, I remember reading one of her posts one time, and that's when it really hit me. That someone her age, same age as my daughter, basically, can experience so many funerals that early in life, so many losses. And I was thinking back to when I was, 15, 16, and even 20. I think I had only been to 1 or 2 funerals in my whole life. And now we find our young people are losing their friends and their cousins and close relatives at a very early age. So we know now that we're also starting this journey of grief earlier in life. We know also, I told the folks that we have devastating data about the deaths in Fraser Salish region that's been shared by the Provincial Health Officer's Office as well as First Nations Health Authority. And it's in the thousands since the start of the opioid crisis. I don't like to talk about devastating data unless I have solutions to follow it up. So instead, we're going to gather and talk about this opioid crisis from your own personal perspective, and suicide, if you wish, how and why you felt it was important to come and be a part of this panel and share only what you're comfortable with. We talked a little about this already in the green room, that we want to share enough to help others know that we're in this together and that we are stronger together, and how and why it's important to start these conversations with the women around the table like we're doing tonight. So maybe I'll start with Auntie Pat again, and just go down our line, sharing, as much as you're comfortable with sharing about why it's so important for us as women to start talking about the opioid crisis and what we're experiencing and the relentless grief that our communities are suffering from.
Yeah, this is really a hard topic, but it's time now. We know that prayer has been answered. It's time that we be truthful and put out the things that's really happening around us. And what are we able to do about it? Mm-hmm. And being able to have a voice to talk about these difficult things. And, I know for myself personally, it's all around us that in our community, the number of deaths that we've had, and nephews and grandnephews and nieces and grandnieces, and seeing the pain that our families are going through, trying to learn how to cope with that. And it just seems like there's more that's added to it because we're not being really open and honest about talking about the truth. And to me, it looks like there's more that are using and really not, it's becoming worse. And the next generations, I feel strongly about our responsibility, as we were told. I know that I was told this personally by my mom, my parents, my aunties. When you're in that role of being a mom, being an auntie, being a grandma, being all of these things, and we go and we try to find a way so that you can talk about the truth that's hurting. Because when we see this and experience death, the woundedness, and it seems like, the bleeding is there, and we just put a little Band-Aid on it. And that Band-Aid seems to go back into more use and more of the things that gives more courage so that it gets worse. Mm-hmm. And it's real. It's happening. And too many are, we're losing them at such a young age. And to be able to, people don't, there's some that are very few that are really open to talking about it, but there's many that I know are not. And we just carry on. But meanwhile, it's spreading out like an infection. And and I can't even remember how many we've lost this past year. Mm. How many funerals I know in our community that we had in October. Just, September, October, was phenomenal. And just seeing how people were just going around, but we're not really able to apply the things that we need to get to the root of trying to get some of that medicine. For myself personally, as I've worked with a few, using our cultural ways to talk and knowing how to use that and blending it with the modern ways of what they learn from the books. I was drug and alcohol counselor too for 12 years, and the many different trainings that I've had. But learning how to blend culture and going back to our ways about how our people could stand and be truthful. And for myself, what I learned personally from the elders, that, the way they talked to us was really simple. It wasn't complicated. And as we look back and I'm thinking about myself personally too, like I said, I got married in 1960, so I've been married for 65 years now with my husband, and a lot of these things and how our own family got impacted, and how it was just rampant, and it got worse because, those are the things that was happening. And I was just talking to a few elders the other day, and they were talking about how much more it is now because of all of the different types of the opiate crisis that we're experiencing right now. And the reality is, it's happening. And what are we doing about it? I've always been a person, I was told by my dad when I was young, when we got married, that I was strong. I was kind of like a young woman warrior. And I sure had to be that to survive what I went through and lived through. There's many trials and tribulations when you're in a relationship and you continue to do what you got to do, how to survive and how to get through all of that. And it was through the grace of God that, the elders talked to me, and I'm thankful for them. Otherwise, I would have had a broken family too as well. But we stuck it out, and we've worked through all of those things. And my belief today in learning how to open a cultural door to really get some medicine to build yourself up to be strong, to understand that the prayer is there, and most of us don't do that. And I remember putting myself in a place of self-destruct because, almost wanting to give up because it seemed like it was too much. And I found myself placed in a position of saying, let's start with me, and I have to put that down in 1980. I have to start doing these things. And learning how to have the courage and not fall back into that circle that wasn't suitable and to raise your family, and learning how to be strong enough to put down the rules of right and wrong. Always remembering how my mom used to always say, right is right, wrong is wrong, the truth is the truth. And when you can do that, and that's really hard, because sometimes we just want to cover it up and say there's nothing wrong, we're okay, we're going to make it. In this past few decades, and seeing how, and I appreciate what you said, Leslie, about, we don't even know the numbers now. And part of that is because it's so difficult to actually face it all. And there's a root of where that comes from. And for myself and the things that I do with my own family, the ones that come to me for help and support, and learning how to talk in a good way about the real things, because we are who we are, and learning some of the things that we can build up so we're supposed to be where we're going to get the good things to teach. And fortunately enough, before we got into that unhealthy circle of alcoholism, there was still some people talking, and I found them again after we got out of that circle, so that, even if it meant sitting and listening to the elders in a way that was hard sometimes, and it was scolding, because they said, my responsibility, and knowing that I have a responsibility as a mother to raise our children, and correcting and trying to keep what I was told. It was something that was very strict. And when they told me when I became a mother, and I had my 5 sons in the 60s, and knowing how to look after them and raise them and keep my house clean and do all the cooking and make sure that those things were in place, I found myself falling back into that kind of a strictness, because I kind of survived through it. But when the devastation of all of these other things that came in, and now when we've been looking at this opiate crisis and some of the things in the family home living, is really got to be strengthened, and we got to be able to go back to some of the ways that our elders were, because to talk and get some of the things that we're looking for, to put down how we look after our families. I know for our home, what happens in our home, that's our business. Our rules are our rules, and the things that we do there, it's the way it is. Even, the things, like our children and our grandchildren, they all know what it is. Mm-hmm. And even the things of coming in with conflict, and if the conflicts happen, and I say, well, if you're bringing it into our home, then let's sit down and talk about it. But if you don't want to talk about it, don't bring it in here, or don't have an argument or anything, because, you know, I'll get involved if you're bringing it into my house, because that's the way I was told by our elders. So there's always that thing about looking back, and I believe we got some of the ways that can really come into a position to answer the prayer, because we're losing too many. Our generations, we have to be honest and truthful, you know, and be prayerful about how are we praying, how are we doing some of the things. Our cultural ways, and I appreciate it. They always say we talk with our ancestors, you know, we go through all of those things to bring in the prayer, the medicine. And it's sometimes we get too caught up in other things that are happening around us, and that gets pushed on the wayside. To keep our circle strong and being connected to the things that we pray about, and prayer will get answered, and you'll get, somehow the Spirit will send somebody, or you'll have the courage to go and do that. I often found, and I was just talking to ylexw this morning, you know, and a lot of the things that we're talking about is real, and, you know, and we talk about what has to happen, and, you know, with a lot of heartache, you know, we're living in a troubled time, but let's do something about it. And I know our talk this morning, you know, and I was saying, you know, what he told us, you know, we pray and we all think, and we, if we say it in a good way, because we were having a funeral for my nephew today. And a lot of times, and the way the old people said, some of us, our aunties, were taking on a motherly role or grandmother role with a lot of our families now. I heard talk about the big family, and I remember our big Joe family reunion, and there was 368 in that picture, and I think that was in 1967. So we're about probably 10 times more than that now. And knowing our family, and as I talk to many of our family, because it's my responsibility to know my relatives, to know who I am. And a lot of them are looking at and knowing that they're missing something, and lots of times it's missing their grandma. They're missing those talks with their aunties, their uncles, and things like that, to try to steer things back on track in that circle of living a good life. But for me, that's what it is, and I always get empowered when I can sit with some elders, and when they're talking truthfully, and we talk about some of the things, you know, we have a reflection about what went on before. Let's not make the same mistake again. And to help prevent us, let's be honest and truthful. And I think that's one way, you know, of intervening. And everybody that comes to our place, they know how I am. I'm straight up, and I talk about the things that needs to be talked about. And sometimes it's hard, but we can't avoid it. We got to go through it, and there's no way getting around it. And that's my motto. That's my thing. And I think with the big parts of our own, you know, I never realized getting to be an elder, how hard that is, what a responsibility, and how you have to carry yourself. And because everybody knows who we are, and being a model to know that you can take charge of what you're supposed to. And we as mothers and matriarchs and as ylexw, we have to know exactly what that means and what is that role. And that's dealing with the truth, you know, as life givers, you know, the things that we go through as women, and there's those pains that we only know as women that our men will never know. And building your foundation at home was always something that was drilled into me when I got married young. And that's the part that, because we're the ones that makes the home, we put down the things. So, but that's all I'd like to share at this time.
Beautiful, as always. I kind of had a little chuckle when you said, when I go and talk with the elders, I was thinking, that's you. Your words are so powerful, and one that really, really sticks out and that we keep using when we talk about ylexw and the work that we're doing. It's not even work. It's hard to describe it as work because it's actually a responsibility. Mm-hmm. And we replace all that language around, this is what we do, this is what we're about, and it's actually, no, what we're doing as listening to words of our auntie and reminding us that as women, as life givers, it is our responsibility. So it's our responsibility to have these conversations and to speak up and use our voices. And, you know, I think one of you, I think it might have been you, Joanne, mentioned Idle No More. It kind of like feels like this is a bit of a movement. Certainly is an opportunity where we have our own platform to talk about things. And we want to talk and we want to share. So thank you so much for sharing all that you shared, Auntie. You got into some of the solutions already, which I love as well. We are going to talk more about, you know, what kind of solutions we'd like to see. But Joanne, would you like to go next and share a little bit more?
Sure, yes. So again, hello everyone, especially all the viewers that have joined us online or who will view this later. Thank you for joining and listening to the conversation. So I've worked in Indigenous social work for 26 years. And then growing up, before there was transition houses, my mom and my dad had a house off reserve here in Vetter and saw like the pain and suffering that happens. And then from the pain and suffering, the use of alcohol and drugs to start to mitigate or to try to mitigate the deep-rooted suffering. So before I even get into an opioid or discussion, I think it's important to acknowledge today is Pink Shirt Day. We're all wearing our pink shirts. Anti-Bullying Day. And as a Stalo woman myself and matriarch up and coming, and all our matriarchs that have joined on today, you know, we stand today united with our pink shirts, not only for ylexw, but to recognize that as the rightful owners of our territories, unceded territories, you know, that we have experienced the most colonial bullying than probably any race on this planet. And I'm not exaggerating. It's research-based from contact, you know, the smallpox epidemic, right? The doctrine of discovery, you know, the residential school. So when you start to lay out that timeline of our impacts as Hualmoch people, as ylexw, as Sesiamath, as Indigenous women of this land, you know, we have experienced a deep-rooted collective suffering, right, and grief from that. And that couples loss of language, land, connection. And when we look at it, Dr. Gabriel Maté always focuses on when people are in that opioid crisis or alcohol, whatever it is, there's such a disconnect. So when you think of that as Indigenous people, we have been disconnected from each other, from our land. Our story is all about disconnect. So I'm here to wear my pink shirt today as a ylexw to try and find a reconnect and a rematriate. As I love what Dr. Winona Hall loves to use the word rematriate. We're rebuilding our matriarchal structure, and we're really lucky here today to have Celial. You know, her wisdom is like a PhD level. Like, so when I'm talking about an opioid crisis, you know, and how it's affected me personally. So obviously for 26 years working in child protection, I've worked with a lot of people who are struggling with alcohol and drugs, but not just that, they're struggling with cycles of sexual abuse, domestic violence, super low self-esteem, and not even knowing their place in this world and how important they are, especially when they're a Stalo woman. So I always echo that, and I use our language to speak to them, because when you use the Halkomelem language, you're speaking to their spirit. And so I'm trying to acknowledge that when I do my work. But I have relatives who have passed away and who right now, till this day, are on the streets in Chilliwack in this opioid crisis. And I've been trying to change that trajectory in my family. And I've really taken a stand regarding prevention, and I'm just going to say it, all young people experiment with drugs. And I have 2 sons, and I can remember, obviously, and we all have to get educated on the opioids and how quickly they can get addicted. And it is a doctor-created problem, and what I'm saying is not made up. It's a research-based thing. It's a doctor-created problem from over-prescribing Percocets and Oxycontin. And then from there, now it's spun into fentanyl and many other things. So when we're looking at this crisis, we have to look at the whole picture, the root of the suffering, and how do we mitigate it, but also treatment. And I'm going to say, as a social worker, if I have someone come to my table and say, hey, I'm ready to get clean right now, where do they even go? There's nowhere to even go, because treatment will not even accept them unless they have 7 to 14 days of detox first. And the detox lineup is insane. And I feel for all the mothers that are joined, grandmothers, aunties that have joined today, because I know the pain you're dealing with. This is an epidemic, and when you feel so helpless, when your relative comes to you, that moment, we don't have any time. When they're ready to get clean, they're ready now. And I have sat with clients and sat with them at the hospital for hours, trying to get them in detox beds, trying to fight with the different detox places, and there's such a barrier. But yet, you know why? And we also have to question government and all of the places. My mom always reminds me, people get really rich off of the suffering of our people. So we have to look at that as well, systemically. And also, too, the solutions we have as Stalo leaders. I'm now talking to our leaders who have these drug houses on your reserve, or the drug dealers that come onto the reserve. We need to start to look at some real solutions there, because that's where it all fuels as well. And like I was saying with the young people, teach them that, back in the day, you could take a toke and you wouldn't die. Today, our young ones, I feel for them. They can't even experiment or anything. I told my sons, I said, if you take a toke, you could die. That toke could be fentanyl. I'm serious. So we have to look at all that. And we also have to get behind the doctors with the real solutions. So I don't know if you've seen on media, but there's certain doctors that are being radical, and they're putting those little tents right outside the hospital, because there's this argument of what way is the best way to heal the opioid issue. Is it methadone or is it Suboxone? And now it's all showing Suboxone, but Suboxone can only be doctor given. And it works effectively if they're given the timely injections. Mm-hmm. Then if it does, they can come off it so much quicker. And yet methadone, they can do methadone, but it just sort of, to me, methadone's a Band-Aid. And then on top of it, methadone wrecks their skeletal system. So that's why you see how they're their spines deteriorate. Anyway, I don't want to get into all that, but the root of the suffering of all of that, obviously that's a medical approach to deal with the opioid crisis. But I think as women, we have the empowerment within us now to be brave and have those conversations that have led to people wanting to use to the level that they are with opioids, alcohol, whatever, and suicidal ideation, is to talk about it's okay to bring up sexual abuse cycles. And I'm going to just say we use the cop way too much with sexual abuse. We've had the cop way to deal with sexual abuse for 150 years. Where has the cop way gotten us? We don't really want to put all our relatives who have sexual, issues in jail. Some, maybe they need to, but I think at the end of the day, we just want the healing. We want things to stop, and I really want to make us brave enough that we can start to do that together as they look out and other whatever branch we're at. And it's not easy. You're going to be targeted if you do. But so long as you make it safe, and you got to not forget, the true Indigenous way is to not let anyone behind. Don't leave anyone behind. Even those who have abused, somebody abused them, So anyway, I could get on a soapbox. I know that's what this is about, but I'm coming from a place of experience for 26 years, right on the front line. And My heart goes out to all our people as we try to navigate through this with all the barriers and all the things. But I love what Pat said too, that there's so many solutions in our cultural ways that can still address it, but it does it in such a soft, beautiful, caring way, which is a very matriarchal way. It's very gentle and loving, and no one's left behind. And anyway, I want to finish with that, and thank you so much for letting me share. We'll see you.
Thank you, Joanne. The reason you're on the panel is that passion that you share with us and all your years of experience. You did call out. I mean, thank you. I had on my notes to talk about the pink shirts, but you did it so much nicer than I was going to do it. But you're right. I think our pink shirts tonight. Mine's the matriarch one from our matriarch gathering last September. Some of you are wearing the ones from our self-love, self-care day from February 2024. We're planning for March 2025, the next self-love, self-care day, so watch for that. But you did say the bullying and the impacts and that we experience this colonial impacts, and how the Indian Act and all the policies are actual bullying policies. They're harmful and they pit us against each other. And it's actually meant to divide in a lot of ways. So I liked what you said there, and just want to say when we reposition some of these conversations to understanding that root of suffering, it is not their fault. When you end up in addictions and having issues with the law, or I always say it's not your fault. Nobody was born that way. The events throughout life shape us. And when most of the things that are meant to protect us actually are the root of our suffering, it makes it really hard. Like I always imagine, like, if you were sitting in a room and you knew all the things around you were not actually designed with you in mind, or even with your best interest in mind, or your caring, right? So these are the kinds of conversations that we need to have as we try to uphold UNDRIP and the rights of Indigenous people, when we start talking about our matriarchs' rights and our Stolo Women's Declaration, which I will read later on this evening. But yeah, you've touched on a number of things, and bringing Gabor Mate's teachings to our conversation as well. He talks often about understanding your wholeness, and when there's things missing, such as knowing where you come from and who you belong to and who claims you, as I've learned from my aunties. Carrie, I know you shared a lot already in your introduction, but you have some very, very personal experience, so please share.
Oh, Siam, I feel how important it is for us to be having this conversation. You know, when I listen to that it's the opioid crisis, and so why are we in crisis? You know, I've heard lots of things already from my awesome ladies here, but so how do we end up in crisis? How do we end up in a place where there's so much disconnection, and our own people are hurting our own people out there, right? Our own people are hurting our own people in our communities and in our families, and it's a major thing for me as an Indigenous woman, and that's why I say, Aim quals of woman slowly, I had to find the words to be able to introduce myself, because I need to remind myself that I'm a strong Indigenous woman, right? Because so many people in my life told me I wasn't, right? And it's such an awful thing. Like, why would you say that to somebody? Mm-hmm. And so. You're stealing my words, Joanne. You're talking about Gabor Mate, right? And amazing person. Yeah. And he tells his own truth. He tells his own story about what it was like for him growing up and things. And, well, you know, we need to tell our own stories. Mm-hmm. And when we need people that love us and care about us to listen. Mm-hmm. I don't need anybody to fix my life. I can do that very well myself. And I think that's a concept and a misperception that we're dependent and we rely on others to do what we need to be doing for ourselves. You know, that's the eye of the storm, right? And yes, there's other places and in the organizations that have responsibility and accountability to deliver service. And our people need to feel safe enough to be able to access that service. Mm-hmm. Just because they're a human being. You know, and we shouldn't have to be struggling so bad when we've been studied to freaking death. Mm-hmm. You know, about, you know, the things that have happened to our people for so long. And so we need to be able to set the table and talk about some solutions to those things, you know, and every single morning that I wake up, I have to think about this. I'm an addictions worker. I've been working at Nankani Wellness Center in Williams Lake for the last 9 years. And I work with young women, 12 to 18 years old. And it's not an easy thing, to do my job. But you know what? I love my job. I love the work that I can do and help them to understand themselves. And that's only part of the solution, right? Because all of these young women are going to go back home to their family and to their community. And so the family and the communities also have a responsibility. And I hear your words, you know, that it's, you know, what it takes for a person to get into treatment. I see it and I hear it every single day. Mm. And so that's, you know, there's so many pieces to this puzzle. It's just like, it's mind-boggling. But so where's our place of power? Where's our place of power in the crisis? The only power that I have is for myself. Yeah. When it comes right down to it. Mm-hmm. I'm a mother. This is my oldest daughter here. And she died from an overdose, leaving 3 children behind. I'm been taking care of 2 of them for the last 5 years, almost 5 years now. And her sister was with her when she died. And I need to say my daughter's name, because I think we have to not be afraid to say the names. And I'm not ashamed of my daughters. I have no shame for who they are. The shame is what happened to them. Yeah. And so this is Haley. Her traditional name is Nishishin. And she was with her sister Linnea, who is Wawalam, or Yachaltal Tamat. I think she carried 2 names. And how do you think a person would feel when it's too late? It's too late. And so Haley lived with that survivor guilt. We could sit and we could have conversation and we could talk and she could listen. But those moments were just in those moments because that other stuff was too big. It was stretching beyond her skin, if you can imagine that she couldn't tolerate things. So both my daughters, they were both 34 years old when they died. Linnea passed away 2 days before she turned 35, and Haley passed away 2 days after she turned 34. And so I think that's my crisis. That's my crisis, you know, and what this has done to my family. And I'm really grateful for the people who understand me and know me, that help me just by praying for me. Because I became what I said I would not become. I prayed and hoped that I would never become that grief-stricken mother that raised me. But I am. I can't change that fact today. All I can do for myself is to accept that, process my grief, reconnect to my children and my grandchildren, and to be happy. You know, that's one of the 7 laws of life, right? Is we have a responsibility to be happy. How come I can't be happy? Because I hurt. My heart hurts every day I wake up. I have to gather myself up and get myself prepared for what it is I need to do today. Because I love my daughters. And I love my son, and I love my other daughter. And you can imagine what my thoughts and feelings were as my youngest daughter, Rosa, and she was getting close to being 34. And the fear that I have. And so I have to do everything in my power to keep myself straight, keep myself focused, so that I can give out good energy and not continue to give out my pain. So prayers have been answered in a lot of ways, and lots of little gifts that have been bestowed just because I wake up and I follow the path, right? And I do my best to follow the teachings, and I'm ever so grateful for our culture and our Seol, our spirit place, and I think it's important for us to acknowledge what our strength is. Our culture is so amazing. It's so amazing. And we need to be able to focus on that strength and that goodness that comes from that. Not about the ego chatter, because, that's there too. There's no denying it, right? That because people are who they are, and, Auntie talks about the truth. Well, we all have our own truth, and people have their own truth according to what they believe, right? So we need to be able to exercise and practice our culture as we've been taught in a good way, and Shwanatqua, my granny, she had to choose. She had to choose between the church or your culture. a difficult choice. But she made the best choice possible to protect her children. And the result, that what do you do when you don't have your children anymore? What do you do when your family is taken away? What are your rights to fish and hunt and all of that stuff? It's disappearing. Oh my God! Now you can't even allowed to do your spirit dance. You're not allowed to drum and sing. You're taking away like everything, right? But I do what I do today because I understand and I know that history. And I never thought that I ever knew Shwanatqua, but we were looking at some pictures one time, and but my granny was standing beside my brother at my dad's funeral. My older brother was the only one from my family that went to my dad's funeral because we were all in the hospital. My dad was killed by a drunk driver in my community. And so, that spiral of pain started when I was 3 years old. And it's alive and well today because that trauma is so much work to heal, but we can't stop. I'm not stopping because I have a great grandchild coming soon, and I'm just so excited about that. I'm so excited. Sometimes I feel like I can't even get the words out, right? Because, that love and fear path, right? And the responsibility that I have for this new life that's coming to bless our family. And so we need to exercise this as a family, this excitement, right? And the pride, and I'm so proud of that, and and scared too, right? Because of what this baby is coming into this world too, right? And so the responsibility is really quite intense when you think about that, and so that's why we need to keep talking about this. It's our past, it's our present, but it's also our future. And what do we want? What do I want for myself in the future? And what do I need to do for my own self to ensure that can happen?
Yeah. Thank you so much, Carrie. You've shared so much, and your story is so heartbreaking, but you're so strong. And even just sharing when you talked about being 3 years old and having that strength already instilled in you, and I believe that was for a reason, right? And I love that you're looking forward to the great-grandchild, because babies change everything. And it's so fresh and new and gives us a new outlook on things. And the reason why we want to keep talking and doing these things, that responsibility to the unborn. So thank you again, and thank you for sharing the beautiful photos of your beautiful daughters, Haley and Lanaya. And yes, we have to say their names, they're not statistics. Grandmothers are losing grandchildren. Mothers are losing daughters. Daughters are losing mothers. Brothers are losing sisters. We talked about this earlier. It's not normal.
No.
This is not whatever normal. In Indigenous and our First Nations world, it's too normal. And we want to change that. And thinking about generations ago, right? Before all of these toxic drugs came into our lives, before alcohol came into our lives, we've all had it. We've all had it in our families. We're all results of different choices that were made for us, by us. I heard Auntie Pat talk about choices that she made to go in a different direction, right? And we want to talk about that, right? Because young people will see Auntie Pat or see you or see Joanne and go, wow, look how incredibly strong these women are. It's work. Just reminding people, it is work to become who you want to be. And whether or not you want to look at things in that optimistic, I can change things. I can change my trajectory of my life, or I can help change the trajectory of others. It is choice, and strong choice. And being resilient and strong. Melody, I know it's hard to be the last of this panel in this list.
Everything was said.
Yeah, but I know you've got some of your own, and please share whatever you're most comfortable with. For those online and following along, thank you for your beautiful messages. I just have to say the messages that are pouring in are full of love and respect and honor, and they're grateful of your sharing. But they also want you to make sure you're sipping your water. So we've all got a water bottle beside us, so please take good care of yourself while you're here. And for those online too, just deep breaths. Remember to take care of yourself as you're listening to some of these personal stories from Our Ladies. Melody.
Yeah, it is very heartfelt. Like, my heart goes out to you, Carrie, losing your daughters. And I don't know what it's like for drugs in a community. I think ours may have only had weed, from my understanding, because my mom wouldn't allow drugs or alcohol in the community. Like, I think she took a strong stance in our community to try and protect our people. And she would kick people out if they were under the influence, and she'd try and straighten people out. And she was chief for 8 years, and she brought a lot of programs and services in our small community, because I can't remember how many houses we had back then, but now we have 34 houses. So you can imagine we only had like 6 or 7 maybe when she was chief. And a lot of the programs that, like, I'd watched her throughout the years, and she had a strong voice, and what she stood for and what she wanted for the community and our people. She would attend the chief's meetings and then bring that information back to our community and try to implement something within the community. And she even did a march throughout the community for sexual abuse, and they were holding placards of stop sexual abuse and whatnot. And even with the drugs and alcohol she didn't want. So she was very proactive in the community, and that's what I've learned throughout the year, that I took on that work as well. And she worked with the women's group and trying to help the women with a lot of the issues that they were going through personally. And that's where I jumped in too. And she stepped down from her chieftainship, and then we brought in the traditional governing system. And then she wanted to bring back the traditional style governance to try and encourage culture and our people to learn who we are as Hwalmach people. And I truly believe in the work that she did start, and I continued on. Like in 2003, when I started my decolonizing journey, I was drinking when I was younger, and my kids, I have 5 kids, and 3 of them were in a row. We're all in the bathroom brushing our teeth. And my son looks at me and he was 9, and he says, "Mom, why do you drink?" I was like, "I don't know." I don't know. I just do. And then he looks at me and he says, "Well, you look dumb." And I thought, oh, my own son to see me as looking dumb. And I think right then I just decided to sober up, and I've been sober for about 20 years. And I've been in a 16-year relationship, so I think that sobriety, it was really easy in the decolonizing journey, and trying to, you get to learn and understand your kids and see their personalities that you never seen when you were drinking. So when I seen my kids' personalities and who they need to be, and then I thought, who was I supposed to be? because when we think about our culture, and I hear Pat talk about our culture and the importance of the smokehouse, my mom was in residential school for 9 years. She didn't believe in the smokehouse, so she didn't want me to go into the smokehouse because she feared something about the smokehouse. You fear what you don't know. So I think that's why she didn't want me in the smokehouse. Mm-hmm. But I got curious and I went anyway and I checked it out. And I mean, it's empowering for a person to learn their identity and who they are and their responsibilities and what they're meant to be. And I think that was a journey that I wanted to be able to find out for myself. Mm-hmm. And throughout the years, I took language, I took traditional medicines, and I wanted to find out, like, who am I as a Homo person and Stalo to this land. I grew up not calling myself Stalo. I didn't like the color of my skin. So I think a lot of those embarrassment growing up, we weren't proud to be Stalo. Mm-hmm. And that's something that I am now, is proud to be Stalo. And I teach my kids their identity and who they are and what they need to learn is their responsibility. I remember coming of age ceremonies that used to happen. And I think those need to come back for us to learn our responsibilities. Mm-hmm. After my 16-year breakup, I'm just going to jump into why. I think it was a personal issue with mine that an old friend reached out to me, and he was, we're friends for 15 years. And then he started coming to me and he said that he seen the strength and power in me, and he wanted to write me in his book. He was writing a book and he wanted me to be in a chapter in his book. So we start hanging out more. And then when we start going out, and I didn't drink, and he was sitting there and he was ordering drinks, and I sat there and I was looking at him, and he ordered 2 drinks, and then the waitress, he said, bring me 2 more. And then the waitress says, oh, only 2 drinks at a time. And then he sat there and he's like, well, she'll order 2 drinks then. And I sat there and I was looking at his 4 drinks, and he just chugged them back. And he got so drunk, and he's 300, little over 300 pounds and 6'4". And he got so drunk in the restaurant, and he's just like incredibly intelligent, smart guy. And then he was staggering to the bathroom in the restaurant, and I was watching him, and I was just looking at him like, I don't understand addiction. I don't understand, like, he wanted to be in this relationship with me and to start this connection. But each time we got together, it was under the influence. And I looked at him, I felt so bothered by it that it just started becoming unreliable. And the relationship, I couldn't rely on him if he wanted to meet or something. Like, he bought me a plane ticket to go meet him. And I thought, if I go on the plane and he's not going to be there to pick me up. And I thought, no, I'm not going to go, because an Indigenous woman flying somewhere where she's not knowing where she's going and then not being picked up. So I just thought, unreliable. And sure enough, he was passed out. Mm. So I didn't get on the flight, and I didn't go. And then he called me 2 hours later, and he's like, where are you? And I was like, see, 2 hours later, I wouldn't have been picked up, and I would have been sitting there for 2 hours. So I just seen the unreliability with the fact that each time, I don't know, like, after being in a 16-year relationship and now trying to jump into another one, I just didn't know how. I didn't know how to date, didn't know how to trust a person. And then he brought me to a concert, and he got so intoxicated, and I had to try and help him and pack him when we left. And then I said, why do you drink so much? And then he looked at me and he says, well, I lost 5 relatives to opioid. And he said, in a span of 5 weeks. And he says, this is how I cope. Mm-hmm. And I looked at him and I thought, Like, this is his coping mechanism. And I wasn't sure how to deal with it, and I just comforted him and tried to be there for him. And then he passed away. He also had diabetes, and he went into a coma, and I just thought, I don't know how to, like, go into that. And I had another friend come forward, and we've been friends for 4 years, and throughout the 4 years, we were closely, like, connected, and then we were supporting each other.
Mm-hmm. He had his sons from back east, and he wanted to bring his sons over. And I was really supportive. He wanted to get connected with his sons, and then his sons came over. And then they came over, and they brought over addiction as well. So they were young. They were in 20 and 18. And then he was sober, and then he started drinking with his sons. And then he wound up getting his son. He had a younger son who was 9. His younger son was taken away by Hyathmeath. And because of his sobriety, when he started drinking, and I tried to help him get his son back. Get your son back. That's all you need to do. And Hyathmeath, they wouldn't even let him, like, take his son, so they kept him. And then he had to go through all these meetings to try and prove so he can get his son back. And he just fell down that path. Like, he just felt like a failure, and he wanted his son back. And I attended all the meetings with him to try and encourage him. And then his son was taken into care in Mission. So I kept on bringing him to Mission. And it was taxing on me. It was like, I have my kids, and then I'm trying to help him get his son back. And it was so much for him. He was just like, I could see his face each visit, each week, each time, month after month, asking for his son. And Hyathmeath kept on telling him, no, you're not ready. And he's like, I don't even know. He threw his hands up in the air, and I said, stop. Just keep going to these meetings. Just continue. And I tried to help him. And then he just ran into some friends, and he started using. And I looked at him, and I told him, I said, why are you doing this? And you're the one who knows spirituality. You practice this, and you know what's needed to be done. Why are you doing this? You need to get your son back. And he says, they're not going to give him back. It went on for 7 months. And he says, he asked, can I just sign up for treatment? Can I just go? Could I just go live somewhere so I can get my son back? And they just kept on denying him and telling him, yeah, if you go here, then you can have him. But everywhere we went, the social worker was just right there listening, and it was really making him mad, because they were just like watching him like a hawk, everything he did. If he had visits with his son, he was getting so upset. And I could see it was really running him down, and it was really making him overwhelmed. He was just getting tired of what Hyathmeath was telling him, and he was tired of getting told no. He was just losing hope.
So he asked me, can you just take my son? And I was like, I can't. I have my daughter. She was just diagnosed with myasthenia, and I was overwhelmed with looking after her. I can't take on your son. And he looked at me and he goes, throws his hands up in the air and he goes, I don't know what to do. And I felt like I let him down, and I told him I can't. It was just getting to be too much for me because he was at my place and he was acting strange. And I said, what are you doing? Like, what are you on? And he looked like he was on something. And I was getting so frustrated with him. And I don't know what he was on, but one time I picked him up and I couldn't even handle the smell. It stung my eyes and it made me immediately cough. And I told him, what the hell is that? Because I don't know drugs. I haven't been around it. And I just felt so angry with him. Because a strong spiritual guy, because we were going to sweats, we were practicing, we were smudging, everything we were doing together. And then he turned to drugs. And I said, you got to go home. You got to go back. And he says, I don't want to go to that house, Mel. And he says, if I go to that house, I won't come out. And I dropped him off. And I said, that's the last image I seen of him. And they told me he OD'd. So I just felt like, I don't know, I felt so guilty because I didn't take his son to help him, and I just burdened myself with guilt. I didn't know what to do. I carried that. And it still affects me today. I still wonder where his son is. I just feel like his son is in care, and we just need to be able to help. I don't know how to help, and I just feel like I've been helping throughout the years. I seen June Jimmy helping people on the streets. So I was always donating coats and clothes and blankets and gloves, making snacks, cookies, distribute on the street. And I've been just trying to do what I can throughout the years to help our community, help our women's group. And then I was grateful to be able to join Thélá to help this tall woman. And I just felt like my heart still hurts.
Thank you so much for sharing, Mel. I know it's hard, but you also find strength in sharing and calling out sometimes the systems that oppress and shame and guilt. I remember you and I talking about that experience, and whatever level of threads of truth there is for that experience with Hothmeath. And these conversations have come up several times about this agency. And it's not even about that agency. I'm just saying the thing that comes up all the time is some of these agencies that are supposed to help us create the biggest burdens, right? And a lot of what's been talked about in healthcare and social services and safety, nothing about us without us, right? And the funding that's allocated for programs and services that are meant for us need to be designed by us. And they need to be no barrier, low barrier, right? And we could take some lessons from some other areas that are doing it a little better than us. And I think, again, part of this conversation is about why. Why are those barriers there? What needs to change in some of these policies and services so that our people don't feel so rejected and alone, fighting the system all the time, and until the point where they're, give up and try to numb their pain again. And we know we've heard this story over and over again. This is not new coping mechanisms. And somebody already mentioned at the beginning of this, the root of suffering. And the root of suffering has been through the children. All tactics have been through children and through taking things away, trying to take the language, trying to take the culture, trying to keep us over here, right? So there was some heavy sharing, but I still think we feel a little optimistic as a group. I still see smiles. I still see nodding heads. We know we're the answer. We are the system. We are firm believers as Indigenous women that we are part of the solution. We're certainly not part of the problem. And well women can help other women. And well women that have resources and supports to do the magical work that they can do can just help more. And Auntie Pat and I were talking about this last week as we were preparing for this talk. And she shared with me how she's had these 5 young women under her wings, and she's been taking really good care of them and helping them from their longhouse, from their house, right? She talks about people coming in her house. Once you come into the to the Auntie Pat hug, you're not getting out of there. And she shared about the love and the care and the success these young women are having. Now that's our healing house, right? They have come to Auntie Pat to heal. But that system, that stream of our health services isn't funded. It's not recognized because we like to use words like treatment, right? We like to use, or the system likes to categorize who we are and put it into certain little programs and then write a bunch of rules around how you can access that program and the funding, right? So we're going to get on from this part of the conversation into, just before we go to some of the Q&A, talk about this idea that we come from complete abundance of resources. And you can actually have whatever you want and whatever you deem appropriate for your family, for your community, to address the toxic drug supply that has come into our communities, the alcoholism, the lack of treatment, the idea that somebody would have to wait weeks and weeks, even when they say to you, Joe, help me, right? What, in your magic wand moment, Joanne, we'll start with you, because you're the passion. What would you want to see? What do you think some of the solutions are that we have not seen yet, or haven't been able to dream big enough to have happen for our communities?
I think it's just an opportunity to hear from our Stalo women who are very strong on the front lines in little pockets of funding and little pockets of programs that are successful, but unfortunately don't get blessed with the cash cow that other governmental, like you said, the mainstream, the prescribed solution, which are, treatment in these fancy places like that. So I'm talking about, like, one of our panelists tonight was supposed to be Joanne Jefferson, who is a dear friend and colleague of mine. Her and I have known each other in our careers from the beginning, and she does a lot of good work at Kweekwelstam and her team there, right? And what they're trying to do, they're trying to create day treatment and detox treatment, and they're a program that doesn't get properly funded, but yet, like, they're the ones that can respond right now when somebody's ready to get on that healing path. We need that to be that responsive, and she understands that and how our people are. And, it's like, and even at Pat, she knows when people need help, she doesn't close her door. Her door's open 24 hours a day. So like, we need to like get out of this like don't allow government and whoever, because they think they're over us. And it's a time to realize that we're over them. And I don't like to use the term over, because we are, as Hualmok, we like to be very collaborative. But I think I'm at a place in my career, and my mom tells me it's because I'm in menopause. When you're a woman in menopause, you come into your real power. And I kind of believe that. It's just like enough. Like our way of seeing it and doing it is over anything the government or anybody else can do for us. We've already seen 150 years of that prescription of how to fix things, and we don't want it. We want our way. We want Snowyeth. Snowyeth is not just a program up in Chehalis. It's a bigger word than that. It means our teachings and how to walk strong. And our ways are gentle and loving and kind, but they're also strong. We help our people. We, as Stalo people, we haven't been here for over 15,000 years by raising people and being fluffy and sissy with how we do things. We've actually built strength. Right? Anyway, so I know I'm getting on a tangent, but I really would like to see those real programs that are Stalo driven, supported, as well as our longhouses. They should not be having to fundraise and this and that. That is our treatment, and it's holistic treatment. And they need help. Like people go to those for the life of Sion, and that's our way of healing. It's spiritual, but it's physical, it's mental. It hits all the domains. And it takes a lot of human energy and love energy to help rebuild someone back up from that. And so it should be considered, because we shouldn't have to even fight for it. If our women agree, we nod, that's what it should be. And I've seen the nods for 26 years, and I'm really getting tired of it, and we need to listen to our women. And I know we have chiefs, political chiefs and that, and most of them are men. And I know a lot of them are trying to create space and place for our women's voice. And I'm very thankful for that, because when it comes to the social issues and healing of our families, our children, our communities, it is actually our women. And we should be putting their voice front and center. And so those sort of things need to be funded, right?
Yeah.
And anyway.
No, I love that. And yes, Joanne, I hope she's listening in, but she lost her voice. She got sick, that bug that's going around. But she's very strong in the same sentiment too. She said to me, Leslie, if only I could get more funding, I could take more people in. And there's a demand for her programming, but just not enough funding. And again, a lot of the funding formulas are driven by population numbers that are so old, or, we need to modernize, and we need to say, as part of UNDRIP, UNDRIP might be the biggest lever we've ever had as the United Nations Declaration of the Rights of Indigenous People, but also here in the province of BC, having legislation that this province must uphold UNDRIP and the rights of Indigenous people. There's language in their section, or numbers 22, 23, 24, specifically talk about the role of women in these rights and the rights of women to be part of these conversations. And we do have the absolute right to be part of the design of the services and programs made available to our families and our communities. And so what does that look like? Right? What kind of mental health or harm reduction? We've talked a lot about harm reduction, and what does that look like in our communities, and that prevention and intervention, and being on the land as being part of the preventive measures, claiming people early. Someone talked about the rites of passage. That's an act of claiming our youth as our own, standing them up and saying you're loved and you're cared for. Doesn't matter who your mom and dad are. You have this whole community and a bigger family that's watching out over you. So we do need to assert that right. We have the right to it. We also have a duty to inquire to the providers on what they're doing to uphold our rights, right? A lot of times it's flipped around, that hierarchy, whether we like it or not, it exists. There's a power above, and then there's us. And we're saying, actually, in that world of rights and that world of women having a right to have a say, we're going to be the ones to inquire, what are you doing? What are you doing to ensure that our voices are being heard? Right? This is what Auntie Pat has been saying to me. Leslie, it's our time. She said, Leslie, make me space so I can have this platform to talk about this. And I said, yes, Pat, our board, our members want to hear from our matriarchs. We know that we, as the menopausal, the group of, 45 to 60-year-old, we have to learn from our matriarchs. We have to learn these teachings now, and we need to teach the younger ones, and we need to keep passing it along. They are ways that have sustained our people for thousands of years. So, Auntie Pat, with your magic wand, all the abundance of resources you could possibly handle, what's missing from our system that you would like to see?
Well, I'd really like to see that magic wand. It's something that we talk about, and one of the things that, as we talk about, and we're hearing about where we are today and what a feeling it is like to be a grandma. And we want to ensure, for the babies that are coming into this world, because each and every one of us have come into this world so pure and innocent with a strong spirit. And, they're so beautiful to hold and to love. And then all of a sudden, it's not given because a part of what the parenting and the things that has to be provided in a healthy way so that the children, as they start to grow, and you can see the ones that are growing in that environment. And parenting is something and a responsibility. And we talk about our inherent right, and I was told this by our elders and by my parents, by my father-in-law, and you're responsible and you're going to have to raise your children. And when you're doing these things, and we need to be able to do this. And the way that I learned a lot of it was from my mom, my aunties, my older sister-in-laws, and we all got together and we can do this and this and this, and we knew how to do it because it was tough times and hard times that we didn't have the means of like it is now today. We learned how not to take the easy way out. We had to be strong enough, and we learned to be strong because the voice was always there to talk to us about, caring for your children, and bringing them up in a safe, healthy environment. Like that. It's really hard. Like I said, I realized, what I was doing wrong because I was doing that in our own home, and then when we quit, and we said, there's no more alcohol in our house. There's none of this. Our rules in our house is our rules. This is the way it is. And I remembered, because I reflected back to the elders and when I was talking to them, and some of them really thanked me for talking to them because they said, we thought we were worth nothing because nobody's talking to us, and that's the way it is now. And right now, I'm wearing out because I have a lot of people that are coming to me, and the things that we have and what you have at home. And then it all leads into talking about the hard things and how the old people talked to me when they talked about those hard matters. And if we're going to really start being strong enough to talk about it, because our beautiful babies, they're beautiful. We all love our babies and our grandchildren, I love my children. And these are the kind of things, and how we are. And we can't lose our ways, like us talking about my nephew today. I loved him as my own. And he was turning to me and asking me for support because he was disconnected. He needed somebody to know about family love, mother love, because he lost his mother, my sister Millie. And in the things that, that went way off, and I was talking to my 3 nieces today, and how are they doing now? Are you still on your sobriety? Yes, but it's hard. But they're proud that they're doing it. And we were just so joyful because, and I was going hip, hip, hooray, because they're your young women. And hallelujah, because all of a sudden something happens. And I said, it makes me feel good because we as elders, we're looking at something, and I'm hoping and praying that we're going to be able to have something coming in that's going to be a strong force to help us in this battle that we're in. I'd like to see that before we're gone, and my insurance is within I'm glad for the panel. I'm glad for women speaking up and being heard, because it's got to come from somewhere. I've been working on this ever since I got married in our community. Everybody knows what we've had. We're striving, we're battling, trying to get things in there. And a lot of people turn away from it. But the real thing is who's suffering, because we're trying to make things better. And I believe that there's still a lot of our elders out there that would enjoy having to have that talk. I know all these times, there's hardly a day that goes by that I'm not sharing a lot of these things and sitting down. And it's hard to talk about the real things. But, for a lot of us, we've got the teaching, and I also got the education. Like I said, I've been working for 53, since 1973. So in many different
Too
capacities.
many years.
But I had to learn how to do everything, because I was told, because of my children,
Yeah. Responsibility. That big R word that we keep talking about. Thank you so much. I think we need to get to some of these Q&As. I'm just looking at the clock, but I have to say what Sherry Lynn just posted in the comments in the chat box. She says, yes, we are the ones we've been waiting for. And so from that place of abundance, we have an abundance of women in our communities. In my imaginary future, I like to try to manifest these things and talk about them, right? Is that we have the strong women, the anti-army, the matriarchs, the grandmothers that are not only recognized in every community, but resourced and paid just the way we pay RCMP to come into our communities, just the way we pay social workers to take care of things, to have them paid to be there to care, to just watch out over everyone, to not have to worry about how you're going to pay your bills, right? But because you're supported, to be the auntie in the community, to keep your eyes wide open, to use your voice to call out what is happening, that everybody likes to go, yeah, that's not my business, so I can't talk about it, right? We're all in agreement. We're done with those days of looking away. You can't look away. Yeah. We got to look straight at it, and we got to start talking about it, and we're going to keep using this kind of venue. Like one of the other guests and participants said, can we have more of this? Can we have more of this kind of panel? But can we bring in some other mix, some of the younger generation, the 2S, and of course we can. Of course we can. This is the first of likely many other conversations. We want to keep talking, right? I speak on behalf of the members of the ylexw. I've heard from them over and over again. We're ready to talk. We're ready to be part of the solution. We want to take our place as the system that we've always had. Yeah, lots of hearts, lots of good comments coming in from the participants. And so let's take a couple of questions, and maybe I can get Carrie. You can answer this one. What stereotypes bother you the most about the way we talk about addiction and suicide in our First Nations communities? And what do you think can be done to break through such stereotypes? Mm-hmm. Would you like to tackle that one? Your first thoughts?
That's a real...
You can ask to call a friend and ask a friend. You can ask Joanne. You can tell she's got some answers.
Oh, my God. Well...
The stereotypes.
I think the biggest thing is that, like when you see a person in active addiction, there's shame, judgment, and criticism. Yeah. That they're not seen as a human being in pain. Yes. And I've been doing this work for a long time. I started in the early 90s. And through that time, I had to grow up. I had to understand what it is that I was teaching and facilitating. Mm-hmm. And so we need to have that kind of love and respect, and that's not going to happen when we're in shame and judgment and criticism.
Yes.
Yep. Simple.
Yep. I love it. I love it.
Get out of the ego and get in your heart.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Yep. And instead, and Gabor Mate talks about this again, look past what you see in front of you. I did a lot of cultural safety training in the health system for the last 2 decades. And I was constantly asking physicians and nurses to not judge by what you see in front of you, but look deep. Behind every eye, face is a little child that was not born this way. That this is a result of many things coming at them that were not in their control. So remember that too. And that we as matriarchs, as a matriarchal society, as women and grandmothers, come from a long line. I remember being very young and very, kind of depressed about who I was and my identity, and we weren't raised to really acknowledge that we were Stalo. And I remember thinking one day, imagine what my grandmother, my great-grandmother, my great-great-great-great-great-grandmother must have gone through in order for me to still be able to say, I'm Stalo. There's so much strength in that. And knowing, and then I imagine my imagination goes wild, and I start picturing them on the land. And what were they doing? How were they feeling? What did they smell? What were they eating? What were they talking about? Right? And that just makes me so happy. So I hope that we can all just get back to sitting in these kinds of circles and sharing. What's your go-to when you find darkness creeping in? Ooh, I think that I'm gonna pass that one. I feel like we shared so much that we're probably a little too raw to talk about what your coping mechanisms are as women. But maybe on our next one we'll focus on that wellness and what we do to keep ourselves well. Yes, and March 15th, our Self-Love, Self-Care Day at the Fraser River Lodge. You'll see the invitation and sign up very soon, so don't forget about that. And then there's the question again, can we do this again with more people? We absolutely can. We're limited for the space up here on this stage, but we can certainly have audience too at some point. And can you speak more about how we have the power? Well, I think... I talked a bit about UNDRIP already, and I think for us, if you don't mind, I can read the declaration. So for those of you that haven't been following along since 2015, 2016, 2018, when we really started to gather as Stalo women, and often we would gather either at a coffee shop, we'd have lunch together and talk about what we wanted to see, and then we gathered 2018, 2019, and then, of course, COVID happened and we had to gather virtually. But over those years, we plucked away at writing our own declaration. And this was really influenced by the declaration of the New Channelith women. And they wrote theirs, goodness, in 1989. and it was a really strong statement. And this is kind of turned into our guiding vision, our what we can stand on to say this is who Thélá and the Stolo women are about. So I will read it as a closing and also to say we are all this already and we are going to keep working on this. Stelo women, life givers, are mothers, daughters, grandmothers, granddaughters, aunts, nieces, sisters, teachers, and friends. We treasure the values and traditions that have been passed down for generations that have sustained us during the many changes throughout history. We take pride in our culture, heritage, and traditions, and we honor and respect our elders and their teachers. We are responsible for the health and safety of our children and our families, and we seek to ensure that our children will always be protected. We believe in the strength of our family ties and assert our right to retain the love of our immediate and extended families. We have the right to be respected in spirit, mind, and body, and to live free from sexual, physical, verbal, and emotional abuse. We have the right to love and to be loved, care and to be cared for, to protect and be protected. We have the right to be heard and to be treated as partners in our relationships with family and friends. We have the right to be individuals, to make our own choices, and to pursue our personal goals. We respect ourselves and will be respected. We will teach our children by example, and we will ensure the well-being of future generations of Stalo is not jeopardized in any way. We recognize changes in our society, and we will call upon our strength to live with these changes in a manner consistent with our traditions and values. We will maintain integrity and pride in being Stalo women. We wrote that over several years and endorsed it in 2023 at our annual gathering. And I just feel like there's so much power in words, and all of these words were selected so carefully so that they would resonate with whoever heard them. As I was reading, I was thinking, well, there's our Declaration of the Rights of Indigenous Peoples and our comments and maybe, you know, the strong foundation in which we're going to continue to grow from. Any other closing comments and thoughts that you feel like you must say before we leave here tonight and before our guests all start to leave? Please, participants online, if you have any final thoughts to share in the chat, please go ahead and do that now, and we'll try to get them read. This has been recorded, and we will use it later, and we'll keep sharing it. So those that missed tonight, your family members or friends, go to our website, watch us on social media, and you will be able to access this recording. Final thoughts, Auntie?
Well, I didn't quite finish. I was saying about the importance of us mothers being mothering our children and being grandmothers. We don't want them to our children, our babies, and the ones that yet to come to go through the same suffering that we went through. It's time for us to change. Otherwise, the suffering is going to continue with all of these things that we're talking about, and we're going to make that stand to make a change. Mm-hmm. And that's what I want for all of our children, you know, our babies. We don't want them to go through what we went through.
Thank you so much. You're right that we talked about the future generations that are coming. Carrie's great-granddaughter?
Great-grandchild.
Oh, I said daughter already.
You're already calling it? No.
Yeah, I'm calling it early. Your great-grandchild.
Unknown gender yet, so we're just waiting for our day, I guess.
And Joanne's going to have another grandbaby. And Melody had one earlier this year. Yeah. So this is a panel of grandmothers and great-grandmothers and great-great already. I know Ginny is, but your sister Ginny, but... Again, thank you so much for joining us. It's been our pleasure to share. And again, these are stories from these ladies that they have shared. Honor that, please. And those stories aren't for us to repeat. They are shared with us as a learning and help add the fuel to our flame in order to help us to address the devastation that we have been experiencing. It is a crisis, and that kind of language should not be used when talking about our families. We come from strength, we come from resilience, and we want to get back to that and celebrate the strength of our people. With that, good night. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. We really appreciate it.